Hello 3kraters, I want to give you a quick update on what we've been working on the last 2 or 3 weeks. We set up all of the e-commerce tracking for your website. So the flow typically goes in, let me show you. So initially when we start off, your Google Analytics doesn't have any of this conversion tracking. It doesn't have the conversion tracking, it doesn't have behavioral tracking. Basically what it means is that Google Analytics do not know when a behavior or when an event has occurred on your website. So to get that set up, we use Google Tag Manager, which I'll show you in a second, and we pass the data on using these things called the triggers and tags. So we set those things up and we link them with your Google Analytics. So this is what you see now. You have all of the e-commerce tracking in there. So for example, I could go to analytics.google.com and I can click on the conversion tab on the left hand side, click on e-commerce. There's the overview. You can start from overview. That's a pretty good start. These are the top sellers, so you can see what kind of products have you been selling. And because we only finished all of this work somewhere around 17 August, 18 of August, so we leave it for about 2 weeks to start to collect some data and to um, have some of the transactions being reflected. So these are the top seller products. You can see all of this stuff here. You can see how much as a percentage is that to your revenue, the product revenue as a gross number, and you can look at the kinds of product categories, so you can see what kind of products, what kind of category sells really well on your website. And we don't have a brand there, but we have the products, we have the category with the what we also did was we can use segments. Let me show you how we can do that. You can compare your traffic and see between organic traffic and paid traffic. How does it look like in terms of conversion rate? How does it look like in terms of transactions? For now, let's actually go ahead and actually do something like purchase. Made a purchase, right? So click on made purchase. Oops. Purchase. Okay, and we click on apply. Now we're looking at two different segments, so I can compare different segments of different sets of customer. I can compare, let's say, if we do have the data about, let's say, new users versus returning users. So how does the new users looks like in terms of the behavior, in terms of the conversion behavior, and how does that compare to returning users? Or what you can also do is you can also compare things like, let's say, country. You can say, how does it look like for a user from Singapore versus a user from Malaysia, and you can start to compare them. Now in this case here, it's not really meaningful because we're looking at all users versus people who have made a purchase. That's about 16.99% of session. That's actually pretty good. And so you can see how do the revenue compare. You can see things like campaign, you can see things like order coupon code, and you can look at again the different segments. So here I'm comparing all users, here I'm comparing made a purchase. Of course, this you want to maybe use nationality, you want to use things like old users, new users, you want to look at medium sources, traffic sources. So let's go ahead and remove that. And all of this is made possible because we start to track the those behavior. I want to show you a few other things that we did that is pretty cool as well. We invested a lot of time into getting your site search feature up, so that is also something I want to show you. But for example, search traffic, right? You can break it down and look at how does it look like between all users or search traffic, or how does it look like between social traffic, people who come to 3kraters.com from a social media site. For example, they saw your ad on Facebook, they like it, they click onto your ad, so those are your social traffic, versus search traffic. So how does it compare to people who search for something on Google and then land on the page, right? So you get a comparison of that, and all of this is really right built in here. So you just have to set up your segment and you can compare them. So again, you can see search traffic, on average, what is the value look like compared to all users? What is traffic? What is the conversion rate? You can see 1.93% versus 1.2%. The revenue between the two segments, and you can have multiple segments. So you can go ahead and actually have search traffic, organic traffic, direct traffic, referral traffic. You can try and compare, or maybe even newsletter traffic. Maybe you doing a partnership with DBS, for example, and you want to sort of compare and see how does this user behave, and especially in the context of conversion rate, shopping behavior. So let's go ahead and actually do a few more things like that. You can see this is the shopping behavior. So you're looking at new users versus returning visitor. So this is the total number of all sessions. How many of them actually look at one product view? So they don't actually land on the website, they actually click on one of your product and they look at it, and then they check out. And then how many sessions, in terms of percentage, how many of those sessions result in a transaction? So 3%, 1.05% versus 3.35%. So you can really do a lot of gain a lot of insights from actually comparing your segments that way. You can look at checkout behavior, you can look at product performance as well. This is product performance. You can look at all of the traffic in here. You can look at all the different products in here. You can look at champagne versus a single malt scotch whiskey, and you can look at the product revenue. You can look at the unique purchases, quantity, average price, average quantity. They're a very rich set of information, because we really implemented all of this stuff. We give it about 1 to 2 weeks to collect the data, make sure that we did all of this right before we come back and report to you. So just happy to see that all of that it's now starting to reflect in your dashboard, and you can look at all of this search traffic. You can compare your sales performance. You can also look at, you can really break down, like, in terms of quantity as well, what kind of products tend to sell you know, in bulk, for example, unique purchases, product checkouts. And here again, I'm comparing multiple. Look, I'm looking at search results, how many of them search for something, right? And there's also things like order coupon, product coupon. I'm not sure if all of these are completely relevant to you, but there is things like, you can look at order coupon code. You can see 5 off. You can see 3K rock. So you know what kind of campaign do really well. So if you have a couple campaign going on with, let's say, UOB and DBS and, you know, a few other merchants, you know what kind of campaign you should be focus firing on, and what just doesn't do enough for you, right? There is also this thing called a multi-channel funnels. This one is a little bit more complicated, but I maybe in a different session we'll do it together, and I'll try and explain them. But I feel like what is interesting to you is to sort of explain the flow itself. So for example, I'm gonna show you this is how they look like when it comes to conversion. So out of the 6 conversion that you have, for example, in during this time period, 442, they generated this amount of value, US dollar. So how do they look like, right? This is the first kind of sort of like a conversion path, meaning the journey, right? So initially they search for your product, they search for it, and you can, let me click on search source medium path, for example. You can see they come from Google. So from Google, they actually search for your land on your page, and then from there on, they make one direct visit to your website. They did not convert, but then they make a second visit on your website, and then they converted. So there are two conversions that actually follow this path. And what is the value for people who follow through this path? And then you can see direct as well. This is 11 times. So somebody have went on your website for 11 times before one conversion event has happened. You can look at time lag. This is actually quite interesting as well to know. Let me explain that first. So 6 conversions happen where a user land on your website on the same day, make a purchase, $716. That's a conversion value. And what is that in terms of percentages? What is that in terms of conversion value, right? And but not everyone is gonna be like that. That's gonna be like our ideal customers, right? But not everyone is gonna follow that kind of pattern. So there are customers who come in there, and then between first visiting your website and making a conversion, that's 4 days of lag. So there's time lag in days. 4 days have gone by. So the first visit to the actual conversion, that takes 4 days, and this is again. So I know all of these values are a little bit small, and that's because we only started implementing this about a week and a half ago. So we really just gave it time to test out and make sure everything works fine. And that's why you don't see huge amount of values in here. But I feel like if you let it go for another 1 or 2 months, we start to see all of these things picking up. Path length is the same thing. This is path length, but in terms of interactions. So no longer in terms of time, but in terms of interaction. So how many interaction do they have to make with your website before they make a conversion, right? So that's there. So all of these are there, and the site search that we talked about earlier, that we said we invested a lot of time into setting this up, because this is, you have 2 different search forms. On 3kraters.com, you have the top search bar, and then you have the right one. We have to make sure all of that works. So now you can see your search term. So you can see how many people search for Macallan, how many people search for whiskey, and then all the different other kind of alcohol. And you can again compare that between all users search traffic. You can compare that between, let's say, organic traffic, or let's say direct traffic, right? And you can apply. And if you feel like any of this is helpful, you can also sort of start a bookmark it, and then you don't have to do this in the future. But you can see now how do they compare. You look at the percentages here, all users, search traffic, direct traffic, and all the way down to Irish, right? You can look at the search terms, and here it gives you an even more detailed breakdown. You can see the total number of unique searches. You can also see the results pages view per search. So how many if they search for McClellan, do they actually click on the next page? If they do, then that will be 2 results page. So how many results page do they go to before in one session? And search exit is actually bad. You want this number to be low. Why? Because it means that these are the people who actually search for it and then didn't see the result and say, okay, the results are not interesting, and then they just leave the website. So that's kind of a bad figure to have, a bad statistics to have. You want this to be low, right? There's also all kind of things like time after search. How much more time do they leave on your, or do they stay on your website after they perform the search action? So you want this, of course, to be long. So you want people to actually stay on your website, interact with it, hopefully add something to cart and maybe check out, right? So that's a time after search. There are search pages as well, not so interesting, but there are all of these things are there. You can really drill and play around with those things. The rest of those things also work because we also integrated Search Console. So we haven't enabled that, but we will do that soon. Just want to show you very quickly because I feel like after 2 weeks of testing, we have all of this ready. So you have organic search, direct, referral, social. You can look at all of this. Bounce rate is, you want it to be low. Bounce rate is somebody going to a website without doing anything, leave the website immediately, right? So that's actually a bad statistics. Again, you want this to be low. So something as low as possible. Numbers of pages per session. How many pages do they visit per session? Conversion as well. You can want to see this to be as high as possible. You want somebody to come in there and make a purchase, hopefully. So you can compare all of those things. And if you realize, a small achievement is that we just hit a new record for monthly users. So that's actually pretty nice to see. So in July, this is the amount of traffic that you have. This is August. So that's actually quite nice, I would say, right? And you can look at the sessions by country. You can look at Singapore, US. This is a time, users by time of day. So all of these stuff are already in here. We just make it better. We just make the data a lot more richer, and that's what we really did. So the last 2 weeks really went hard to work to make sure we get all of this stuff out. And now I think I can make a video and sort of walk you through all of this. If you want to have some time spent together and properly go through like a proper explanation and a proper a detailed understanding of each of this stuff, we can schedule time. But that's about it for the video. I just want to really show you that, and you can download Google Analytics on iOS and Android and just go and take a look for yourself. That's it. Have a good evening.